Do the thing where it.
I'm going to mute.
I get a bit of a lag. Hang on. So just opened up. All right, there we go. Cool. Thing where it. It's going to repeat. Hang on. A bit of a lag. Hang on. There we go. Got to turn the sound off. It does that every time. All right, cool. So hey everyone, welcome to Sustainable Red Bank. I believe everyone currently on the call has been on one before. We should have some more people trickling on. Just so everyone knows, this is live on Facebook now. If anyone hasn't, well, yeah, you've all been here. Just so everyone knows, the library is now open. People can come in. We've got, you can check out books, you can get on the computers. So we're finally starting to get a little bit back to normal at the library, and we still have curbside checkout for people who don't want to come in just yet. But yeah, this is Sustainable Red Bank. We do this once a month. I sign up for our email listserv if you want to get any notifications about future programs. Next month, we actually have Phil Blackwood, who is on this call, talking about trying to make your home more energy efficient. So we're excited for that. And then we've got a couple more scheduled out for the summer, but we'll be doing these once a month, pretty much just going forward. Anyway, so today has one we got a lot of interest about. We had a lot of people asking for this. We're doing Electric Vehicles 101. Our speaker today is Tom Moloughney. He has been driving EVs for 12 years, and he has driven every production EV made since 2009. He's the senior editor at Inside EVs and also the staff EV expert for Forbes. He administers an EV training program for Plug in America called PlugStar, which trains and certifies dealerships. And he has worked with over 300 dealers in 5 states over the past 4 years. He also has a YouTube channel called State of Charge, which is dedicated to electric vehicle and EV charging equipment reviews and advice. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Tom, and we're going to get a PowerPoint going here. And if everyone could keep their speakers on mute, unless you have a question when he's done talking, we'll have a Q&A session, and then we can kind of go from there.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Well, thanks for the invite. I appreciate that. Today, I put together a little PowerPoint presentation. We called Electric Vehicles 101. So I'm not really sure the sophistication level of the people that are dialed in today. This is kind of a 30,000 foot overview of electric vehicles, where we are now. So if you know a lot about EVs, this might be real elementary, but we're going to go through this presentation without taking up too much time, and then I'll open up for questions. If you have any questions about electric cars, electric car charging, infrastructure, anything, throw them at me. So with that, let's start the presentation. Next slide, Matt. I don't think I can change it. So really quickly, I know Matt told you a little bit about me. Who am I? I've owned electric vehicles since 2009, and I've driven about 300,000 all electric miles, mostly powered by the solar array on my home. So that's true zero emission driving, like Phil and Nancy Blackwood do and have been doing for as long as I've been doing. I own and manage public charging stations in Montclair, New Jersey. I own a commercial property, and I installed public charging stations. They're a level 2 charging station and a DC fast charger. I actually had the first public level 2 charging station in the state of New Jersey. I installed back about 12 years ago, before there were even electric cars. I knew they were coming. I started an EV consulting company in 2014. As Matt said, I'm an editor for Inside EVs and Forbes, and I've developed and implemented an electric vehicle dealership training program where we teach car dealers how to sell electric cars, basically, because there's so many different aspects to electric vehicles, and dealers, if they don't have the proper training, they push the cars to the side, and you end up not selling them. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy when they say, oh, nobody wants these electric cars. It's because, you know, when they show up at the dealerships, the sales staff don't really understand them. They don't know charging. People ask them questions. They can't answer them. They get frustrated, so they leave. We go in there and we train the dealers so they understand electric cars and they can answer customer questions. I'm also the host of the YouTube channel, State of Charge. So if you're on YouTube, you go over and check out that channel. I have a lot of instructional videos, how to charge a Mustang Mach-E, how to charge the Volkswagen ID4, and I also do full electric vehicle reviews on the channel also. Why don't we go to the next slide, Matt? So first, I just want to go over some basic EV terms because not everybody even understands what an EV is. So often somebody will, I'll talk about electric vehicles and they'll say, oh yeah, I had a Prius 10 years ago. I'm not really into electric vehicles. And while they do make Priuses that plug in, most of them don't, and at least the early ones, none of them did. And while that is a hybrid electric vehicle, it's really not what we're calling electric vehicles. And let me explain. A battery electric vehicle, or a BEV, is a fully electric vehicle. It only has one propulsion system, which is electric. It's got a big battery and one or two motors or more, and that's how the vehicle moves. A plug-in hybrid electric vehicle has the electric motor, a battery, and it also has a gas or diesel engine. So it plugs in and it's a hybrid. Now, an HEV, is just a hybrid vehicle that has no plug. Toyota makes tons of them. That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about electric vehicles. Electric vehicles have to plug in to really be considered an electric vehicle. And I'm going to throw around the term ICE sometimes. That means internal combustion engine. That's the conventional engine that's in a gasoline or diesel vehicle. Why don't we go to the next slide, Matt? So while I'm a huge supporter of electric vehicles, and I am convinced that within the next decade, the entire personal transportation sector is going to transition to electric vehicles, there are challenges. So I want to go over some of them right now. Electric vehicles are fundamentally different than gasoline and traditionally powered vehicles. Now, why is that? Well, they rely on a new infrastructure, and they force their owners to do things differently than they're used to. And that's a problem for a lot of people. I don't think very many people actually like gasoline, but we've become so used to it since we've all been driving our whole lives. What do? We get in the car, we fill it up with gas, we drive it for 2 or 3 or 400 miles, and then we go back to a gas station and we fill it up. We don't like that, but we do it and we're comfortable with it. Electric vehicles force people to use new unfamiliar equipment and put in unfamiliar situations. And that makes people uncomfortable. It's part of the challenges of this transition to electric vehicles. There's need for new customer needs and customer education, to be quite honest with you. People, you know exactly how much you're going to cost to fill up your car with gasoline. You've been doing it forever. But if I said, look, if you buy a Tesla Model 3 or a Nissan Leaf or something like that, do you know how much it costs to fill the tank, quote unquote? I bet very few people could answer that question. Even some electric car owners can't answer that question. So there is need for education on electric vehicles for people to feel comfortable with them. They call for new approaches by dealers and manufacturers. The whole business model of dealerships, believe it or not, is around the service department. Car dealerships make more money servicing your vehicle than they do selling it to you. Electric vehicles is going to destroy that business model because there's such a small amount of service required. There's no regular maintenance with electric vehicles. Things can break. Things can break on any type of vehicle, air conditioning compressor or shock absorber or something, but there's no regular maintenance other than change the tires and change your wiper blades. So the dealerships are going to have to figure out and develop a new approach in order for them to remain relevant and profitable. Charging infrastructure is improving, but it's not yet mature. We're not nearly at the point where anywhere you go, you can just conveniently plug your car in. We're getting there. We've made tremendous strides. Nancy and Phil can tell you from when we started driving electric vehicles 10 years ago, there were no public charging stations, let alone these ultra high speed DC fast chargers, which I'm going to get into later. But now they're populating all over the place, but we're still not quite there yet. Single charge driving range is still less than a comparable ICE. That's another challenge. And people are used to that. They're used to 300 to 400 miles, and then they have to get more gas. And also the initial cost of most electric vehicles, even with incentives, still remains slightly higher than a comparable internal combustion engine vehicle or ICE. The incentives help to offset that. But, right side by side, they still do cost more initially. Their total cost of ownership is less because you have much less maintenance and your fuel costs much less. But it's hard for people to get their hands around that. They look at this car and say, oh, that's a $40,000 car. Oh, that electric vehicle is $48,000. I don't have the extra $8,000 to spend on it. However, after 3 or 4 years of driving, if you factor in the incentives and the savings on maintenance and fuel, the electric car actually costs less. But that's tough to really communicate. If the dealers aren't really good at that, then it's going to be hard for people to understand why they should move into an electric vehicle. And the bottom line is really important. They're not yet available in all shapes and sizes. There's not every type of vehicle available in electric vehicle. Minivans, pickup trucks, full-size SUVs, the vehicles that we see all over the road now, they're just not available yet, but they're coming. Why don't we jump to the next slide? Okay, so what are the next steps for electric vehicles? Oh, and by the way, that's a brand new Volkswagen ID4 that I had on loan a few months ago. Great electric vehicle. I can answer any questions you have on it later if anybody has questions on the ID4. It's Volkswagen's really first serious attempt at an electric vehicle, and I think they nailed it. So we'll take a look at the next steps. Legacy OEMs. OEMs are original equipment manufacturers. That's the traditional automakers that the Chevys, the Fords, the Volkswagens, not startups like Tesla and Lucid and Rivian and things like that. They're finally on board with electrification. Tesla dragged them into this kicking and screaming, but they're finally realized that this sector is shifting to electrification, so they better start making good electric cars, and they are. The one in the picture there, the Volkswagen ID4, is a great electric car. Ford just came out with the new Ford Mustang Mach, fantastic crossover, absolutely great car, and there are others. But the point I'm making is, for the last few years, the legacy brands kind of made these compliance cars. They had to make them for regulations, for their average fuel economy. So they made these half-hearted efforts. But now they're actually making electric vehicles that can stand on their own and are great cars. Billions, literally billions, are being invested in high-speed EV charging infrastructure across the country. Here in the state, we're getting a lot in New Jersey, but across the entire country, the pace that these charging stations are being installed is incredible. We're talking dozens and dozens of high-speed chargers every week are being installed across the country. Charging speeds have increased dramatically. A 20-minute stop on a road trip may be all you need to recharge your vehicle. There's a couple new electric vehicles coming out, like one's the Hyundai Ioniq 5. That's coming out in a few months. It charges to 80% in 18 minutes on one of these high-speed DC fast chargers that they're installing across the country. Think about that. If you're going on a long road trip, you only have to stop for 18 minutes and the car's 80% charged. By the time you walk into a store, maybe use the facilities, grab a cup of coffee and walk back out, you're ready to go for another couple 100 miles. Within 2 years, every type of vehicle will be available in EV form. That's what I said on that last screen. One of the problems was that some of the vehicles that are very popular today, these SUVs, pickup trucks, they're just not available in electric vehicles. By 2023, every type of vehicle that you can imagine will be available in fully electric form and in plug-in hybrid form. Even Jeep is electrifying their Jeeps. They're coming out with a plug-in hybrid this year. And then I think a year later or 18 months later, fully electric Jeep. Prices are dropping dramatically. And that's really directly related to battery tech, because the reason why electric vehicles are more expensive than their ICE counterparts is the battery. The battery is really the big cost of an electric vehicle, and battery tech is improving. And also, since more of these automotive grade battery cells are being made, literally, tens of thousands of them every month, economies of scale are taking effect. So we're getting improved technology and economies of scale. We're opening up battery plants across the world. It's driving the prices down. And we should have cost parity with internal combustion engine vehicles within 2 to 2.5, some experts say 2 to 3 years. An electric car will cost the same as a comparable gas car, same vehicle side by side. We're only a couple of years away from that. At that point, the incentives aren't needed, the federal tax credit, the New Jersey rebate, because if the vehicle costs the same as a comparable gas car, the incentives can go away. Last year, the median range for all electric vehicles sold in the US was 259 miles. Now it's come up dramatically, in the past few years. Only 4 or 5 years ago, the average EV only went about 125 miles per charge. Now the average one goes 260 miles per charge, and those ranges keep increasing. Vehicle manufacturers, some countries and some states in the US are planning to entirely phase out the sale of new internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035, and some of them even talking about 2030. So you're looking at inside 10 to 12 years, somewhere in that time frame. You won't be able to buy a new internal combustion engine vehicle anymore. That's where the industry's going. Why don't we jump to the next screen, Matt? Okay, really quickly, I want to talk about charging for people that aren't really familiar with electric vehicles. So any electric vehicle can be charged from a regular household outlet. All the way to the left, take a look. That's called level 1 charging. 120 volt, you can plug it into your household outlet. You can charge your electric car. Problem is, it takes a long time because you don't get a lot of power from a regular household outlet. You only get about 3 to 5 miles of range added to your car every hour. Now for plug-in hybrids, they only have sometimes 20, 25, 30 miles of electric range because they have the internal combustion engine as a backup. Level 1 charging is fine because you'll refill the battery overnight. You'll only get about 40 miles of range overnight. But for fully electric cars, especially those with big batteries and long driving range, most people are going to want level 2 charging, and that's from a 240 volt source. It's like a electric clothes dryer or an electric range at your house. You install a 240 volt outlet, the level 2 charging station plugs into that. You can directly wire them. It's called hard wiring, but most of the chargers today are plug-in units. So you just plug it in, hang it on the wall, and that will deliver somewhere between 10 and 34, even as much as 40 miles of range per hour, depending on your electric vehicle, because every electric vehicle can accept a different amount of power. And the vehicles that are more efficient, can go further with less power. So it's the same with gas cars. You have cars that get 20 miles per gallon. You have cars that get 40 miles per gallon. It's the same thing with an electric car. Some of the electric cars are much more efficient than others. With level 2 charging, you can fully recharge the battery overnight. You can get around 250 miles of range when you come home from work. If you were to plug it in, by the time the next morning, you'd be fully charged. We'll take a look all the way to the right now at DC fast charging. So you would never install one of these at your home. It would be too expensive, and the power company would flip out if you tried to ask them for a 800 or 900 volt service. Take a look down at how fast they charge. 3 to 20 miles of range per minute. We're not talking about per hour anymore, like on level 1 and level 2. Every minute you can get up to 20 miles of range, depending on your EV. Some EVs can accept more power than others. The newer ones are able to accept more power than the EVs that were sold 2, 3, 4 years ago, much more power. And the ones that are coming out this year and next year can charge at ultra high rates. Those are the ones that you can get about 20 miles of range delivered per hour. Tesla vehicles have always been notoriously good at returning a lot of range per minute on the superchargers, particularly the Model 3 and the Model Y, and the new Model S and X that are coming out in a couple of months. They can also charge at this very high rate, somewhere between 15 and 20 miles of range per minute that you're plugged in. So if you pull into a supercharger, you plug in, you're there 10, 15 minutes. You can get 150, 200 miles of range back to your car and continue on your trip very easily. Now, I want to talk really quickly about the connectors. You can see that on level 1 and level 2, it says J1772 charge port. That's because all electric vehicles, except for Teslas, sold in North America, use a connector called the J1772 connector. They're all the same and all the chargers are the same. Tesla uses their own proprietary connector that only Tesla uses, but they have an adapter so you can plug in a charging station made from another brand and still charge your Tesla. Where it gets a little dicey is with DC fast charging over here on the end. I don't know if that's covered by our pictures on my screen. It is, but there's 3 different connectors that are used with DC fast charging: the J1772 combo, Chatamo, and also Tesla. Almost all of the manufacturers use the J1772 combo, except for currently Nissan and Mitsubishi. Nissan has already announced that they would be switching to the J1772 combo next year or at the end of this year. So what we're seeing is a consolidation, and the entire market here in North America, other than Tesla, is going to be using the J1772 combo plug. So if you have an electric vehicle, you do want to use an app called ChargeWay or PlugShare. They help you find public charging stations where they are if you're going on a road trip. They'll also make sure that you're pulling up to a charging station that has the connector that you can use. Most of the new charging stations, the one installed in the last 2 or 3 years, all have both connectors. As you can see on that picture, there's 2 connectors there, the J1772 and also Chatamo. But some of the real old stations that were installed, 7, 8, 9 years ago, they can be either or. So you don't want to pull up using an app to a charging station only to find out you can't use it. So if you do get an electric vehicle, I recommend you use an app called PlugShare or ChargeWay. You download those apps and then you set the filter for the car that you have, and the app will only show you the charging stations you can use. It won't direct you to a charging station that has a connector you can't use. But your local chargers that you have installed in Red Bank, those are level 2 chargers. They all use the J1772 connector, so you'd be able to use them without a problem. Why don't we go to the next channel? Okay, I just wanted to put up a couple of new electric vehicles just to give you an example what's out there on the market these days. The Polestar is a sub-brand by Volvo. This is just coming out. I actually had that car last week. I got to do some reviews, range tests, and driving and charging tests for it. It's called the Polestar 2. It has an EPA range rating of 233 miles per charge. Next to it is the Ford Mustang Mach E. I talked about that earlier also. That comes in different level trims. The one that you see there has a range of 270 miles per charge. They also have a version that goes 305 miles per charge. And also a version that goes less, I think 230 miles. It has a smaller battery. But the ones with the larger battery the minimum they go is 270 miles per charge, and the longest range one is 305 miles per charge. So now you're talking about nearly as much range as a gas car can provide. Why don't we go to the next screen, Matt? Okay, Tesla Model 3, that happens to be my car sitting in my driveway. And that has 353 miles of range. Teslas are notorious for very long range vehicles. They've kind of pioneered the industry, and we can't really underestimate the impact Tesla's had in putting these long range desirable vehicles out on the market and kind of forcing the rest of the companies to say, hey, we need to get on board with this because they're doing something special over there. And then over on the right, you'll see the Chevy Bolt EUV. That's a brand new electric vehicle that's coming out in about a month. Chevy has always had the Bolt, well, I'll say always, since 2017, the Bolt EV, which is a compact hatchback. This is a slightly larger vehicle. It's new to the market. It's coming out in, I want to say a month and a half, 2 months. It has an EPA range rating of 247 miles. And I believe it starts at $32,000 or $32,500, something like that. That would qualify for the New Jersey state rebate, which would be $5,000 off the hood, cash on the hood at the time of purchase. Now that program is paused right now, but it starts up probably in July. We don't have official word, but it looks like July it's going to start up again. So you could have a Chevy Bolt EUV for somewhere in the high 20s. And it's a great electric vehicle. Super, got a lot of utility, ton of room in the back, and it's pretty affordable. So why don't we go to the next one? I think that's it. This is my favorite part of the presentations when I do these Zoom meetings and webinars. I love to interact with people. I hope we've got some questions coming out there. Anyone? Bueller.
Hi, this is Nancy. I have a question.
Hi, Nancy.
Hey, in a Tesla, you put in your destination and the map automatically routes you through wherever you need to charge. What other brands of EVs do that at this point?
Quite a few of them, actually. Most of the newer EVs that have come out in the last couple of years, if you enter a destination in the navigation system that is beyond your driving range, it will say, you cannot make this destination. Would you like me to suggest a charging stop? And you can either accept it or deny it. You saw that picture that I showed before of the Polestar. I just had that last week, and I do these range tests where I drive the cars and see how far they can go. And the thing just kept telling me, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. But I knew where I was going and that I was going to be able to make it. So yeah, to answer your question, you get a lot of warnings. The cars don't let you just run out of energy. You get these warnings. They keep coming out in your face that the driver's display blinks and and it says, please let me take you to a charging station.
Oh, thank you. Other question?
Is there anything going on with battery swapping? I read about battery swapping, and it sounds like it's something that's going to be passed by faster chargers.
So yeah, I actually there's a couple companies that are investing in this. One is NIO in China, and I was over there with NIO actually right when COVID came out. Last December of 2019, I was in China with NIO when they just started announcing that there were these problems and everything. And I got to drive their cars and use their battery swap. It worked fantastically. It was 5 minutes. I pulled in, I had a new battery, 250 miles range, and pulled out. The thing about battery swap is, and I think you answered your own question, Bob. I believe personally, at least, that the fact that we're getting this ultra high speed charging, and while it will probably never be as fast as battery swap, you'll never get a full battery charge in 3 minutes, and you can swap a battery in 3 minutes. If you do get 80% or 90% full in 12 to 15 minutes, I think people like the fact that they own their battery, and they're not getting this new battery all the time. Like, they take care of it and they feel comfortable with it. They're not getting another battery that somebody else abused or whatever. And also in China, very few people own their own homes, so they can't charge in their own private garage. They live in these giant apartment complexes that don't have charging. So for China, public charging is absolutely paramount if they're going to transition to electric vehicles. So it works in China. I don't know that now this company NIO just announced they're bringing their battery swap system to I think the Netherlands or one of the Scandinavian countries, probably Norway, because Norway's the epicenter for electric vehicles. And they're going to start installing them there. So let's see if it works in Europe. I don't know if it would work here. With such a big country, we'd need so many battery swap stations, and the batteries would have to be interchangeable between different cars, maybe even different makes, and you'll never get two manufacturers to make the same battery. They'll never agree to do that. So, there's some hurdles with that.
What suggestions do you have for renters?
Do some homework and look in your area for public charging. Talk to your employer if you're not working from home still. I've heard plenty of cases where somebody went to their boss and said, "Look, I know I'm in an apartment. I want to get an electric car. do you think you could put in a charger? I'll pay for it. You know, and the employer wanting to retain the talent, not wanting to go out into the labor pool. What's it cost them? You know, $1,000 to run a circuit and put in a charger at work. And the large employers like, say, ADP here in New Jersey, they're already installing banks of charging stations in their parking lots. So, you know, there's that. There's the employer angle. There's public charging. You know, I've heard of people making deals with like the municipality where they have public charging and said, look, you know, can I buy a permit? Can I, you know, park my car here? Now they can't reserve the spot for them. If someone else is parked in it charging, then that's, you know, tough. They might have to come back a few hours later and plug in, but really depends on how much work you want to put into it. And that's where we are right now. But the public charging infrastructure is dramatically improving. And when you think about it, if they get an EV that has, say, a 300-mile range, they won't have to refill it more than once every 4 or 5 days, maybe once a week. So if there's a DC fast charger not far away, they can, you know, on the weekend or on any night, they can go plug in, go grab a bite to eat. These things are all located right near food and coffee shops. So you could plug in, even if you have to stay there longer, now you're filled up and now you're good for the week. So if you want to make it work, you can make it work. It just depends on, you know, what you're willing to do.
This is Nancy again. I do know that, I think I read it just the other day, that Red Bank does have an ordinance that says if you're building a parking garage of X number of spaces, they have to make account to have EV charging available as
Yeah,
well.
so what you're talking about is called charger ready
Charger-
legislation. I actually, back when Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor of New York, he asked me to testify on his behalf in front of the committee that was voting on whether they were going to pass this ordinance in New York City. They called it the Charger Ready Ordinance. And it was like a month before he was going to leave office. I forget what year that was, 2013 or somewhere around there. So I testified. It was long. It was only like 2 hours. I had millions of questions were thrown at me about electric vehicle charging. We got it passed. And that was the first charger ready law passed here on the East Coast. And since then, all new construction in New York City, I think that was more than 6 parking spaces. And if you rebuilt a parking garage or something, either a lot or a garage, you didn't have to install the charging stations, but they have to run the conduit and have the capacity available in the service panel. They can't use it. Those circuit breakers have to be blocked off, so you can't use them and then not have them in the future. But right now, hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces in New York City that aren't being used yet for electric car chargers are being reserved for it. So when the adoption rate raises, it'll be super easy. They'll just hang a charger, pull a wire, and it'll be done. So that's great to hear that Red Bank has done that also. There's not that many communities that are progressive and doing that. There's 2 things we really should be doing. Charger ready legislation. We should also build into the building codes that every new home has to have a NEMA 1450 outlet in the garage, a 50 amp circuit, so that the person could just plug in an electric car. And also right to charge legislation. And that would be if you live in an apartment complex or a condo association and you want to install a charger, they can't tell you you can't, as long as you're willing to pay for it all, pay for the electricity, pay for the installation. And if you have a dedicated parking spot, if you don't have a parking spot that belongs to you, you can't. But too often I hear stories of people even with condo associations that have their own private garage, that the condo association tells them you can't charge your car in your garage. And they can't even give an answer why they won't let them. You know, it's just, no, you can't, because they're on power trips. So that we need that legislation passed also. Right to charge and charger ready legislation is really important for us to push for here in the state.
So we have an older Tesla, so we don't have any self-driving kind of capabilities. Can you give me a sense of how the progress of that over the past couple of years, and if you have any projection for the next couple of years for Tesla specifically?
Yeah, sure. So with self-driving vehicles, they're classified in 5 stages. level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5. Level 1 is basically like adaptive cruise control and braking assist. Level 2, where we're kind of at now, Tesla's kind of like at level 2.5, is where the car can perform tasks like drive on the highway with very little input from the driver. Like it can steer, it'll brake, it'll accelerate, and in some cases it can even change lanes and take off ramps, but very limited to that. Like you can't just hop in the car and say, take me to work. That would be level 3, which Tesla has some pilot programs out there now with that FSD. They call it full self-driving, which, as much as a Tesla fan as I am, I think they went in a really bad direction with the nomenclature of their self-driving tech that they call it autopilot. It's not an autopilot. Autopilot gives you the impression that the vehicle will just drive itself. And then they call their next level full self-driving. And so, I mean, I'm sure everybody here, if I said full self-driving, would assume it's full self-driving.
Full self-driving.
It's actually not. It's you have to stay there and be attentive. So even Tesla's full self-driving is kind of like level 3 autonomy. Right. It's not even level 4. Level 4 is basically no input from the driver is required, but the driver is required to be present and alert in case they have to take over. But level 4 technology, you should be able to get into it and just say, take me to work, and sit there with your hands folded, and the car should just go and take you to work. So we're not near that yet. There's a lot of people in the industry that don't think we're going to be at full self-driving until the second half of this decade. And I tend to agree with that. I think that we're a good 5 years away at the minimum of being able to get into a car and just tell it to take you where you're going. Now, Elon Musk might disagree with me, or at least he might tweet the opposite of that. But he's a great showman. He's taken Tesla to where they are now. But like everybody, he has his faults, and sometimes he says things that tend to not turn out to be true.
He sets lofty goals with short time frames,
which is good. But the problem, Phil, here's the problem I have with Tesla and with Elon or Tesla's lofty goals. They sell full self-driving for $10,000 now. It's an option you can buy with the car. And there's a very good chance that if you were to buy a Tesla today and pay $10,000 for full self-driving and keep the car for 3 or 4 years and then sell it, you will never have driven a full self-driving. So they're selling something that doesn't work now and may not work until you sold your car. Right. And you know what? When you sell that car, the new owner loses the full self-driving part of it. Even though you paid $10,000 and you've never used it. So I love Tesla. I own a Tesla. But there's some questionable things that they do.
When you pay for it, it doesn't stay with the car, and it doesn't stay with you either.
Where does it go, Phil? Where did my $10,000 go?
Well, in somebody's pocket. I have heard from a friend of mine that the I guess the autopilot, or whatever, he's got everything on his car. Mm-hmm. It reduces fatigue on long trips, and I like it because of the safety aspect.
Yeah. Listen, I don't have full self-driving. I didn't want to pay the $10,000 in my car, but I have autopilot, and I use it all the time. I just took my Tesla up to Kennebunkport, Maine last week, and it was about a 350 mile drive, something like that. I had to stop once in the middle for about 25 minutes. That was it. And I used autopilot nearly the whole time, and it really does, as you said, it reduces fatigue. It does 90% of the work for you, but you have to remain alert. The danger in it is it's so good, it tempts you to not pay attention. But it just takes that one split second, that one thing it couldn't read, that it thought that was a plastic bag in the road, but it was a big boulder, and you can have a problem. So use it, but always remain alert and always be focused on the road. But it does reduce the driving fatigue.
We're retired. What cars should we look at? We're mostly driving locally. We're not commuting to work. Which would you look at first?
Well, what what price range are you looking at? I mean, there's electric vehicles that are 30,000. There's, Porsche just dropped off $155,000 Taycan in my driveway, and I would highly recommend that vehicle. So, Bob, do you want a sedan? Do you like crossovers? What type of vehicle are you looking for?
Well, it would be lovely to have, we've been driving a Forester, so it'd be lovely to have, a car with that higher seating and all.
So like a crossover. One thing I'll tell you that you can get a fantastic deal on right now is a used Audi E-Tron. The Audi E-Trons cost about $75,000 new. You can get one that's like 2 years old now in excellent condition for like $48,000. They're literally almost half the price, 2 years old with like 10,000 miles. It's because one of the issues with electric vehicles is, especially not so much now because so many manufacturers are bringing out such good vehicles. The cars that came out 2, 3, 4 years ago, the new vehicles now are so much better. They go so much further. They charge faster. So it devalued the cars that are only a couple of years old. And also with the incentives, the fact that the person who bought that $75,000 E-Tron got a $7,500 federal tax credit. There's also no sales tax on electric cars in New Jersey. So even if you buy a used one, you pay no sales tax. So if you buy a $50,000 car, you're saving over $3,000 in sales tax. So the E-Tron is like a little bit bigger than your Forester. And I was looking at used ones the other day, and I was like, well, this is for in the 40s. You're getting a $75,000 luxury Audi. It's a fantastic deal. If you're looking new, the Volkswagen ID4 is a great car, and that's very comparable to the Subaru Forester. To me, I think it's my favorite new car of 2021 because of what it offers. It's it's not a sports car. The Mustang Mach-E is similar to it, but the Mach-E is more of like a sports car. The ID4 is a family mover. It's a very, very Volkswagen-ish, kind of nothing unnecessary, just, very sensible, and, it has everything you need, but not a pound more, but I thought it was a great car. And the Volkswagen ID4 comes with 3 years of unlimited DC fast charging on the Electrify America network. So that's these high-speed chargers that can charge the car really quickly. So if you buy or lease one for 3 years, you could literally pay $0 for fuel. So what's that worth? What's your Forester cost you for 3 years of fuel? Probably about $4,000. Yeah. Well, I don't know how far you drive, but the average person drives 12, 13,000 miles. That'd be about $4,000.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Sure.
It's Nancy again. I'm sorry. If anybody else wants to jump in, please do. I just have a few more questions. Because electric vehicles have battery packs, are fire departments trained in the case that there is a fire with the electric vehicle? Because I know they do have to do something differently than they would with an ICE.
Sure. Some are, Nancy, some aren't. There isn't the funny thing is, I was just talking with a retired fireman recently who was picking my brain because he's thinking about developing a national course for safety with electric vehicles and being able to train all these fire departments and first responders. A lot of the companies provide these manuals and they send them out, or they have them available online and the fire departments can download them. I know BMW, I was involved with BMW quite a bit back in the day. I know they had this course that they had. It was an online course for the i3 and the i8, and it showed first responders exactly what not to touch and where they can use the jaws of life to cut the vehicle. Basically, the fire departments are taught that from the waist up, it's safe. There's no high voltage cables above the belt line. So they can cut, they can do whatever they want. And underneath the hood, there are, in some vehicles, there are these things you can pull, and it disconnects the high voltage battery from the car. But it's different from every vehicle. So I'd have to say right now, I don't believe there is like a consistent level of education from fire department to fire department. This is still new. And, you know, it probably, I would think in many instances, what's going to happen is, you know, they're going to try to get the passengers out, you know, and the one good thing about electric vehicles is normally if there's a devastating crash, the car doesn't go on fire immediately.
Right.
Like gas cars do. You can slide into a tree and the thing can just immediately go on fire. But with electric vehicles, typically, and we've seen this with dozens and dozens of accidents, if a fire starts, it starts smoldering, cracking, and popping for like 15 or 20 minutes before the pack actually starts to get engulfed in flames. And it's enough time to get people out, provided there's somebody there that can assist the person, or the person can leave the vehicle under their own power. And then the fire departments just bombard them with foam and water until the pack goes out. I saw one interesting thing in Europe. They have this truck that's filled with water. It's like a dump truck, and it's filled with water and has a crane. And what they do with the electric vehicles are, if they're on fire, the thing picks them up and puts them in this big tank of water. It just submerges the whole car. And they leave it in there for like 2 days or something. So, I mean, that's the best way to put it out, but, you know, and the safest way, but, you know, I don't know if we're going to adopt that here.
I also have 2 more questions, and I'm sorry to.
No, please. We don't have too many other questions.
What do you, if you were to get, say, an emerging adult whose first car, and you're considering an electric car, what would you get for them?
You know, Nancy, there's so many different vehicles that are out there. You know, what I would maybe get from my mom might be different from like her needs. You know, my mom always want like small cars so she could see out of them really well with a lot of glass. You know, it's, you know, there's no one perfect car for everyone. That said, as I told Bob before, I love the new Volkswagen ID4. I think it's going to fit so well for so many people. I really do. I think
a little bit more.
What's that?
New driver.
A new driver?
New driver, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I thought you said an elderly driver.
No. A young.
Yeah. Oh, okay. A new driver. Oh, geez. So,
so we know accidents are going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. It's not an if, it's a when. And
so, you know, as far as accidents, as well, you guys probably know this for sure. Electric vehicles consistently rate as 5-star in crash tests. The fact that they don't have this giant block of metal up in the front of the car that has to be dealt with in an impact that doesn't, it's, you know, a big engine is not good for a crash structure. It doesn't give. So electric vehicles, the whole front of the vehicles are designed as crumple zones. So if you look at most electric vehicles, they have best in class crash worthiness because they can design them, literally the whole thing can crumple because there's no big solid mass of weight in the front that, you know, in a traumatic head-on collision in a gas car, the engine can end up in the passenger compartment. You know, you don't want that to happen. There's nothing up front in the electric cars. The whole thing can just crush and absorb the power. But what would I get today? And I'll tell you I just got a friend, his 17-year-old daughter, an electric vehicle. Okay. Chevrolet redesigned the Bolt. I showed you the Bolt EUV before. They're also coming out with a new refreshed Bolt EV next month. So they have thousands of 2021 brand new Chevy Bolts in inventory, the old style. Manufacturers don't like to have 2 vehicles sitting on the lot that are different. It's not good. They initiated these incredible lease deals. So my friend just asked me last week, guy lives in town here, you know, my daughter wants to get a car. I'm thinking about an electric car. I said, go over to Motion Chevrolet, which is up by me. I said, go lease her a Chevy Bolt. He got a Chevy Bolt, $150 down, $191 a month for 3 years.
It's not bad.
The whole cost of the car is like $6,300 for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's a perfect little car for a new driver. It's safe. It's got great crash test ratings. It goes 265 miles per charge. And it's extremely affordable. But these deals are going to be gone in a month or so. You know, because they're going to sell out of this inventory. They're leasing the heck out of them right now. And to get those fantastic rates, you need to get like a base Bolt without all the options, you know, and everything, and which can push it up a lot, you know. So some of the base ones might already be taken, but if you shop around, you call a bunch of dealers, you know, and you know, you can probably get one for a really good price.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any more questions? Okay, one more. I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize. I want to answer questions. I wish we'd get some more.
Insurance. Are the insurance rates different for an electric vehicle versus a an ICE vehicle?
Yeah, not really. You know, the insurance, there's some exceptions. Like the BMW i3, you know, I had one, was a little bit more expensive because it has a carbon fiber frame. You know, when it costs a lot to repair. You know, the insurance companies look at data on how many accidents per, you know, 1,000 miles that the vehicle has. And they also look at how much does the vehicle cost. So, you know, a $40,000 electric vehicle shouldn't be any more to insure than a $40,000 gas car that's comparable. It really should be the same.
Oh, that's gone through my list of questions. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Anyone have any EV curiosity?
One last question. Some of us have been talking about climate change and dealing with climate change and all the things that low income, modest income Americans are going to have to cope with in paying the cost of all of this. And there was a lot of concern looking at the cost of EVs. They said, well, how are these people who are used to driving, you know, a 20-year-old beater going to be able to afford an EV? Is the market in used EVs going to be enough by, let's say, the latter part of the 2020s into the 2030s, going to be enough to bring all of the lower income drivers into the EV market?
So, you know, that's a great question. And the thing about it is, there's not a huge amount of used EV inventory right now because we're really just starting to have EV adoption accelerate. But these cars are going to last a long time. And yeah, they're going to be very affordable. You know, in California, that's ahead of us here, they have a lot more electric vehicle choices than we do. Take, for instance, the Fiat 500, which was a fully electric Fiat 500. Fiat had to sell them because their CAFE requirements. So they made these cars and they dumped them on the market for really cheap. They were like, you could lease one for like $149 a month. And now all those vehicles are used. So you could buy like a used Fiat 500 in California for like $5,000, $6,000. It's a good car. It goes about 100 miles per charge, you know, and it's a great vehicle. We're going to see that here, you know, particularly in a few more years. Once, you know, all the people that are buying their second and third EV, the used EV market is going to absolutely be able to support lower income families. But I don't think that's even enough. I think we should be doing more to incentivize electric vehicles for lower income families. I really do. I think that's important. One of the things that I've kind of been one of the few people that have really championed this. Not that I could make any action happen, but if I could somehow talk to President Biden, I'd love to get his ear on this. The federal tax credit is definitely it favors people that are of more financial means because we can afford to buy and I'm in that category. I admit it. I can afford to buy an electric car now and wait 10 months to get my $7,500 federal tax credit back. People that are less fortunate, that are lower income families, they can't put up that money. and they can't get financing for a car, and then wait to get their $7,500 back. That should be a point of sale rebate, like we have here in New Jersey with the new New Jersey rebate. It's a point of sale rebate. You get $5,000 off the price of the car, and then the dealership gets that money from the BPU, the Board of Public Utilities, who's funding this program. The federal tax credit should get changed to a point of sale rebate. And I would be okay at this point with putting a cap on the amount of that you can spend on the vehicle. Now, I wasn't in favor of that years ago because the only electric vehicles out were very expensive vehicles, because that was what we had to produce. You have to do proof of concept. You know, the new vehicles were going to be very expensive. But now we see, you know, it's quite possible, and many companies are making brand new, really good electric cars for under $50,000. So, I would consider putting a cap on the cost of the car, but it needs to be changed to a point of sale rebate, and that would really help, economically challenged families. If you think about it, here in New Jersey, if you could get $7,500 off the cost of the car at the point of sale and the $5,000 state rebate, you'd be talking $12,500 with no sales tax. You know, if you could buy an electric vehicle, like a $35,000 electric vehicle, now you're talking in the low 20s out the door. And that would put it within the grasp of a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we've hit 8 o'clock. Do we? We don't have any questions on Facebook. It looks like we do have some viewers, yeah. If no one else has anything, I think we'll maybe wrap it up. Going once, going twice. All right, sold. Thank you so much, Tom. That was really interesting. I didn't know most of that, so that's.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. I was happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. So everyone, next month it actually is Phil Blackwood is our speaker next month. He's going to talk about making your home more energy efficient. Thank you everyone for coming, and yeah, we'll see you. And thank you, Tom.
Great to see
Take
you,
care,
Tom.
everyone.
Great to see you, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to see you guys.
All right, bye, guys. Nice to see you all.